You check your inbox, another compliance report buried under layers of polite denials. You sit in a meeting where everyone nods along to a decision you know will hurt real people, and no one says a word. Later, at a dinner party, someone jokes about cutting corners like it's just part of the game. You smile, but inside, something tightens. A silence settles in your chest, not emptiness, but weight. Society calls you difficult, too intense, too rigid. They say you'd be happier if you just let go a little, went with the flow. But what if your refusal isn't weakness? It's precision? What if you're not broken for walking away from rooms full of lies dressed as strategy? You don't lack friends because you can't connect. You've lost them because you saw too clearly. The moment ethics became optional, loyalty became transactional, and truth became a liability. This isn't loneliness, it's filtration. And today, we're naming the 6 rare traits that mark those who refuse to compromise, not out of pride, but principle. These aren't flaws, they're fault lines in a corrupt system, and you're the tremor it never saw coming. If you've ever been called too honest for your own good, this is your reckoning. Because the world doesn't need more agreeable voices. It needs yours, unbent, unblinking, and alone by design. Trait 1. Moral pattern recognition. You don't just hear the words in the meeting. You feel the silence that follows them. When a colleague says, "This is just how we've always done it," your mind doesn't register an excuse. It registers a red flag, a pattern. You see the subtle shift in language from patient safety to throughput efficiency. You notice the audit log that's been temporarily disabled for system maintenance. You track how a new policy is introduced not as a safeguard, but as a loophole carefully worded to provide plausible deniability. This isn't paranoia. This is moral pattern recognition, a hyper-developed cognitive skill that allows you to see the ethical architecture behind every action, email, and corporate memo. While others listen to the surface narrative, you map the hidden structure of intent. Psychologists describe pattern recognition as the ability to identify complex wholes embedded in many separate elements. In your world, those elements aren't abstract. They're the building blocks of a system that either protects the vulnerable or exploits them. For the average professional, a compliance report is a box to check. For you, it's a living document, a snapshot of the organization's moral health. You spot the moment integrity begins to decay, the first wink at a minor violation, the first email using "we" to diffuse individual responsibility. You see the dominoes before they fall. This gift is also your burden. Industry mixers become unbearable. Someone boasts about creative, regulatory navigation, and you don't see a savvy operator. You see a future headline, a patient harmed, a trust shattered. Your brain won't let you enjoy the performance because you're calculating its cost. They'll call you cynical. But you know the truth. You aren't inventing the pattern. You're the only one who can see it. Your solitude is the price of your clarity. And in a world that rewards willful blindness, the ability to see the truth is the most dangerous and necessary trait of all. Trait 2. Intolerance for ethical ambiguity. Most people treat ethics like weather, something to be discussed, complained about, but ultimately endured. They say, "It's not black and white," as if that absolves them of choosing a side. You don't believe in gray areas, not in your line of work, in pharmaceutical distribution, in regulatory compliance, in elder care, in any system where human lives hang in the balance. There is no gray. There are only choices disguised as compromise. Your intolerance for ethical ambiguity isn't rigidity. It's precision. You understand that just this once, is the first syllable of systemic collapse. You've seen how a single unchallenged exception becomes precedent, then policy, then catastrophe. When others shrug and say, "We have to be practical," you ask, practical for whom? At whose expense? This trait isolates you because it makes collaboration painful. You can't sit in a room where people debate whether falsifying temperature logs is really that bad if no one got hurt yet. You know harm isn't just physical. It's the erosion of trust, the normalization of deceit. Your nervous system reacts to moral vagueness like an allergen. It spikes your cortisol. It drains your focus. They label you difficult because you refuse to sign off on documents that contain deliberate omissions. They say you lack business sense. But you know, business without ethics isn't sense. It's suicide, dressed as strategy. Your intolerance isn't a flaw. It's a filter. And every time you walk away from a deal, a promotion, or a friendship because the terms violate your code, you prove that some lines cannot be crossed, even if everyone else has already blurred them beyond recognition. Trait 3. Documentary instinct. You don't keep records to win arguments. You keep them to preserve reality. When a superior says, "Just trust me on this," your hand moves to your keyboard before your mind finishes processing the request. You BCC your personal archive. You screenshot the Slack message. You timestamp the call log. This isn't paranoia. It's documentary instinct, the deep, almost biological compulsion to anchor truth in evidence before it's rewritten by convenience or fear. You've seen how quickly narratives shift when liability appears. The colleague who urged you to bypass protocol suddenly claims they never approved that. The executive who demanded speed now says compliance should have stopped it. Without documentation, you become the scapegoat, the lone voice against a chorus of manufactured innocence. Your instinct isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. It's about ensuring that when the investigation comes, and it always does, there's a thread of truth someone can follow back to the source. You archive not out of distrust, but out of duty. Because you know, in systems designed to obscure, the act of recording is an act of resistance. This makes you a threat, not because you're plotting, but because your very existence creates a paper trail that others can't control. They'll call you paranoid or not a team player. But you know, the real team players are the ones who protect the mission, not the myth. And sometimes, the only way to do that is to quietly, meticulously, build a vault for the truth, so it survives long after the liars have moved on. Trait 4. Sovereign. Accountability. You never say, "I was just following orders." Not because you're defiant, but because you understand a fundamental law of integrity. Your signature is your soul, whether it's on a compliance form, a safety report, or a silent nod in a boardroom. You own it. This is sovereign accountability, the refusal to outsource your conscience to hierarchy, culture, or consensus. In your world, people hide behind titles. My boss told me to. Legal signed off. Finance approved the budget. But you know titles don't absolve. They amplify. The higher the risk, the greater your personal responsibility, not less. You've watched good people become complicit not through malice, but through delegation of their moral agency. This trait costs you. Promotions go to those who get things done, even if it means bending rules. Bonuses reward speed over scrutiny. But you'd rather be passed over than carry the weight of knowing you enabled harm. Your accountability isn't performative. It's internal. It lives in the quiet moments when no one's watching, and you choose to correct an error no one would have caught. They call you rigid. But sovereignty isn't rigidity. It's self-governance. While others wait for permission to do what's right, you've already done it. And in doing so, you've claimed your freedom. The freedom that comes from knowing, without doubt, that your actions align with your values, even if it leaves you standing alone. Trait 5. The witness reflex. You can't look away. When a vendor slips an incentive into a contract, when a colleague mocks a whistleblower as dramatic, when a policy change quietly removes oversight from high-risk shipments, you don't just notice, you bear witness. This is the witness reflex, an involuntary, almost sacred commitment to seeing what others choose to ignore. It's not about judgment. It's about memory. You understand that systems of abuse thrive in darkness, in collective forgetting. So you become the keeper of what happened. Who knew? Who stayed silent? Who benefited? You don't do it for credit. You do it because someone must. This reflex isolates you because witnessing is lonely work. Others want to move on, to focus on the positive. But healing can't begin until the wound is named. Your presence in a room changes its energy, not because you speak loudly, but because your attention is a form of moral gravity. People feel it. They grow uneasy. They accuse you of making everything heavy. But you're not making it heavy. You're refusing to pretend it's light. And in a culture obsessed with optics, your quiet insistence on truth becomes a silent rebellion. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be the record. And as long as you remember, the truth cannot be erased. Trait 6. Post-compromise clarity. After you walk away from the job, the partnership, the friendship built on shared silence, you don't feel loss. You feel relief. This is post-compromise clarity, the profound, almost physical sense of alignment that comes when you finally stop negotiating with your own conscience. You realize the exhaustion wasn't from the work. It was from the constant internal war between what you knew was right and what you were pressured to accept. In the aftermath, your mind clears, your sleep returns, you rediscover your voice, and that clarity terrifies those still inside the system because it proves escape is possible. They'll try to pull you back with guilt, you're abandoning the team, or flattery, only you can fix this from within. But you can't fix a machine designed to break things. This trait is your ultimate power. It transforms solitude from a wound into a sanctuary. You're not waiting for the world to change. You're building a life that reflects your values, uncompromised, unbent, undeniable. And in doing so, you become a beacon. Not for the crowd, but for the few who are also listening to their own quiet, insistent truth. You are alone by design. Not because you failed to fit in, but because you refuse to disappear. You're not broken because you walk alone. You were designed for this moment. When integrity is rare, truth is inconvenient, and silence is the easiest choice. The empty chair beside you? It's not a sign of failure. It's a reservation. Reserved for those who've also paid the price of principle. They're out there, building, documenting, refusing, just like you. Don't fill that space with noise. Don't soften your edges to fit into rooms that thrive on compromise. The world doesn't need more agreeable voices. It needs yours, clear, uncorrupted, and unwavering. This solitude isn't your sentence. It's your sanctuary, your training ground, your silent declaration that some lines must never be crossed, not for profit, not for peace, not even for belonging. So stand firm. Keep your records. Speak when it matters. And know this, the day will come when someone looks back at the wreckage you refused to enable and calls you the only sane one in the room. Until then, walk alone, but but never doubt. You are exactly where your conscience needs you to be.